Hello, my darlings, and welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Miranda, and I am the Enchantress of Avalon. So today's video is one that I've wanted to do for a while, and I'm surprised I haven't done yet. And that is a video discussing Elaine of Astolat, the Lady of Shalott from the Arthurian legends. But given it's the spring now, I thought it was the perfect time to really discuss this tale because it just always feels like such a springtime maiden energy discussing her. So yeah, we'll get into that in just a moment. Firstly, I want to note I am in a different configuration than normal. I'm actually in my living room because the sun is shining in here and I have all this natural light and I wanted to take advantage of it. Secondly, I just wanted to remind everyone that in addition to running this YouTube channel, I also do have an online priestess business, White Rose of Avalon, which you can find at whiteroseofavalon.life. I do tarot readings, channeled readings, I have mentoring sessions available, and of course I run online classes. I'm currently teaching the second year of my online class, The Melusine Mysteries, and this summer I am opening enrollment for a short 7-week-long deep dive into Celtic mermaids called Lessons from Celtic Mermaids. So if you want more information on any of that, I will of course link my website down below. It's always linked down there, as is my Patreon, Avalonian Rose Fairy Mysteries, which is a fairy mystery community. So if that appeals to you, maybe consider joining. And we're actually currently, in addition to all of the fairy goodness and mermaidy goodness over there all the time, we're currently running Practical Magic Book Club in anticipation of the sequel film coming out in September. So all that stuff is always linked in the description box below. But now, with all of that being said, let's dive on into the story of Elaine of Astolat, the Lady of Shalott. So, firstly, Elaine of Astolat is an Arthurian character, one of multiple women named Elaine. I already actually did a video that was a deep dive into Elaine of Corbanoch, who is the Grail Maiden Elaine. I think I published it in December, January, because I feel her pull a lot in winter. So I did that video in winter. But this is another Elaine. And similarly to Elaine of Corbanoch, this is another Elaine who is in love with Lancelot. Oh, always, always. So firstly, why do I call her two different things, Elaine of Astolat and the Lady of Shalott? Well, same figure, same thing, but Elaine of Astolat is how she's often referred to in older lore, older legends, but because of the iconic poem, actually there are two versions published 10 years apart by Alfred Lord Tennyson, we have her named the Lady of Shalott. So that's why we have both. And side note, some people pronounce it Shalott, some people pronounce it Shallot. I usually say Shalott because, first of all, it's spelled differently than the little vegetables, the springtime vegetables, like the green onions. Shallots are 2 L's, 1 T. This is 2 T's, 1 L. So it's a little bit different, and it also differentiates who I'm talking about, that I'm not referring to a vegetable. In any case, both are correct though. If you want to call her the Lady of Shalott, that's fine too. I just prefer Shalott. Now, that being said, Elaine's story is really, really interesting and very tragic, which is probably why she became a favorite subject of the pre-Raphaelites, who are painters, poets. They were the start of the arts and crafts movement. It was a whole artistic movement in the height of the Victorian period. Of course, there are later artists who are pre-Raphaelite style artists, or considered pre-Raphaelite style, like, for instance, John William Waterhouse. He wasn't part of the original Brotherhood. He was much too young, but he did do the same kind of subject matter, and he's a favorite of mine as well. So, you know, I just like to differentiate. There is a little bit of a difference. But the pre-Raphaelites in general had this kind of really deep fascination with doomed women, especially doomed young women. So we see a lot of paintings centering on these type of figures, a lot of poetry written. And they were very inspired by the works of Tennyson, because of course he was the ultimate poet in England at the time when they were painting. He was the poet laureate for a very long time. And actually in the late Victorian period when he died, it was a whole thing, like the entire city of London mourned him. So Tennyson was a big deal at this time. So of course, any figure he wrote about was primed to be chosen for paintings, right? And so, what's the basic story? In older versions, we have a still very tragic story, but not quite as tragic, because she's not as isolated. She gets really isolated in the Tennyson version. But in the older versions, like your Mallory and what have you, Elaine is a young woman who is living with her father in this kingdom that's just downriver from Camelot a bit. And one day, Lancelot is injured at a tournament held in this area, like in her father's lands, right? So Elaine, of course, had saw Lancelot already. She'd seen him and she was like, oh, he's gorgeous. Of course she's fallen in love with him because, oh my goodness, do most women in the Arthurian legends fall in love with Lancelot? It is this running theme. And it's such a running theme that, you know, you fall in love with Lancelot, but you're doomed because he will never betray Guinevere. It just runs throughout the legends. But it's so insane to think about this because you're even having figures who are not normally associated with loving Lancelot, loving him in more modern media. We have now like Morgan Le Fay having a thing for Lancelot, which in older legends was not at all a thing. The rivalry with Guinevere was very different in older legends. Oh, I'm just realizing if you see smoke coming through, I have incense burning. I noticed it on the camera. I don't know if it's visible to you. Anyway, but the rivalry with Guinevere was not at all based on Lancelot and jealousy over that, but kind of everything is circled around Lancelot in more modern media. So it's kind of hilarious to think about, but okay. So she of course sees Lancelot in this duel, in this joust, sees him get injured, and she is of course enamored with him. So she asks that he be brought to like her rooms in the castle so that she can tend to him and help him heal. So she has taken on this kind of healer energy that we do see in a lot of figures. Morgan Le Fay is a healer. Isolde of Ireland, like the Queen Isolde, she's a healer. So we see this a lot. And she's taking on this healer role to heal Lancelot after this joust. And she takes care of him and he heals up fully. And it's assumed that he was like in sort of a fevered state, not really cognizant or else completely, knocked out. That when he wakes up and he's, himself again, he just thanks her really graciously for taking care of him. And that's it. She's getting thanked. She's getting commended for helping him, but she's not earning any sort of like recognition romantically from him, which is of course what she wanted. So she gets very angry at him and he does leave, obviously. Well, 10 days later, Elaine dies of a broken heart and she asks her last wishes, which are in fact granted, is that she will be prepared and put on a boat holding a lily in one hand and this letter to Lancelot in another, describing her love and how heartbroken she was that he didn't reciprocate her feelings. And she's set on the river to go down to Camelot. And then, of course, when she arrives, this letter is given to Lancelot. He sees her and he feels very guilty. And so he pays for this really extravagant funeral for her. But still, she's dead. Now, again, the Tennyson version takes this another step further because no, Elaine isn't like with her father and just healing Lancelot and developing feelings for him. No, she's actually cursed in the Tennyson poem. And she's in this, basically this tower, this room. And there are windows behind her, which actually, there are windows behind me right now, so it's actually pretty appropriate. And has a mirror in front of her. She could only see anything from the outside world in the mirror. She's not allowed to look directly at the window, because if she does, the curse will fully activate. And at that time, she knows that, she's a ticking clock until she'll die. So she's very careful, and she's weaving these tapestries of the outside world and painting these paintings of the outside world in this reflection, the mirrored reflection. But one day, Lancelot is walking behind her outside, and she's so enamored by how gorgeous Lancelot is that she can't resist but to look behind her out the window directly. At that point, that mirror, that enchanted mirror in front of her, cracks. And that's where we get the iconic line, "The mirror cracked side to side." This is a time of revealing truths. And honestly, this moment to me in the poem always reminds me of the Three of Swords card in tarot. The Three of Swords is always thought of as a card of heartbreak and betrayal, which it is, but it's because when you peel back all the layers, at the heart of it, the Three of Swords is about uncomfortable and painful truths being revealed. And the painful truth is that for Elaine, she has activated a curse accidentally, and she'll never be loved by Lancelot. No woman but Guinevere is ever truly loved by Lancelot. And that is the tragedy. That is the utter tragedy of this whole tale. So, Elaine at that time, realizing what's going to happen, she prepares a boat for herself. She writes that letter to Lancelot. She gets in the boat and she drifts down along the river to Camelot as she's dying. And it's very much that energy of singing that last song, just mournfully letting herself pass away while on this boat, instead of being fully already dead and put on the boat like in the earlier versions. And of course, same thing, eventually discovered by Lancelot and realizes the whole gravity of what has been going on. So yeah, Elaine of Astolat, the Lady of Shalott, she is an incredibly tragic figure. She is a figure that it feels in the Tennyson version is kind of combined with some Rapunzel energy, with being, isolated and in this room, she cannot leave. And of course, love, the potential for love is what breaks that spell and allows her to do something fully of her own accord, fully a sovereign decision. But that decision, made in sovereignty, made in autonomy, leads to her death. It is beyond tragic. And so we have this just very, very visceral reaction to a young woman losing her life due to a broken heart. And I think it speaks to something within the maiden archetype, within the maiden energy, within all young women, especially when we're teenagers and in our very early 20s, is this idea that heartbreak is the end of the world. This idea that if we're not loved by the object of our affection, that is it. I cannot go on without him. Of course, when we grow, we realize that no, you can. And people that are meant for you, like the relationship that will truly ignite you in the best possible ways, he's gonna reciprocate your feelings. But this person hasn't reciprocated your feelings, so we need to let them go. So there's so much learning within the Lady of Shalott tale, and I think it's beyond beautiful. honestly, to learn from that, to examine this more tragic side of the maiden archetype. And obviously Ophelia fits directly into this as well. I actually wrote a blog post on Patreon about this, diving into specifically the tragedy of the maiden archetype and examining Ophelia and the Lady of Shalott and all of the, overlaps between that. So again, if you're interested in my Patreon at all, that is one of the new posts there. It would have been, when this video goes live, I think it'll be the second newest post on there. So yes, there is a lot of this. And also, Ophelia, another favorite of the Pre-Raphaelites. Because again, you have a tortured, doomed young woman. Someone who dies at the first bloom of youth. This is tragic. This is painful. And just in general, society tends to feel all the more pain, drama, and disdain for a young person who dies too soon rather than for an adult, someone in old age who dies. It's sad to lose anyone, but the person who really never got to live is always sadder. And I think that's why the Lady of Shalott captures the imagination as much as she does. And also, I think the reason why she speaks so deeply to women, especially when they're like teenage girls, and to us even as we grow into adulthood, when we're like doing any sort of inner child, inner maiden work, which I do a lot of in the springtime. Another reason why I associate this story so strongly with the spring. It is that time that allows us to kind of heal, to go back over things, to say, oh, what seemed like the end of the world at that time in my life, it was not at all the end of the world. I'm so glad I persevered and kept moving. And I think we can learn from the Lady of Shalott that we need to do the scary thing, to confront the uncomfortable and painful truths, and to still make the choices that are rooted in autonomy and sovereignty, even if we have to sacrifice to do so. Yeah, she's such a potent story, and I am so glad that I got to share that with you. I hope that you have found it inspirational, maybe a little bit healing. Maybe you're going to want to journal about this story and about your relationship to the maiden archetype. All those would be wonderful. And for the end of the video, I wanted to share just a little bit from the Mists of Avalon Oracle, because there is a Lady of Shalott card in this deck. So this is what the card looks like. And I'm sorry I got glare on it, but it is a very lovely card, very based on the Waterhouse painting of the Lady of Shalott, but she's not sitting upright. She's already kind of succumbed, and you can see the letter. This letter to Lancelot is there. So the keywords on the card are love, idealism, illusion, and victim. So I do want to read what the guidebook says, because I really like what the author of the deck, Rose and Sarah, had to say. And also this artwork is by Nadia Turner, and she's wonderful. She's done some great Oracle and Tarot decks illustrating them. So oh, side note, I'm really, really happy that they numbered this card 27, because that little wink and a nod reference to the 27 Club, do not know if it was intentional, but it's also that whole idea of like between 27 and 30, we're going through Saturn returns. There's a lot of stuff coming up at that age, so it makes sense. In any case, this is what the card says. Look deeply into thine own eyes and allow yourself to fall into the beauty you see reflected. The message is the illusionary world we create for ourselves reflects back to us in a mirror image. Be that the relationships we have, the jobs we work in, the places we live, the friends we have. You are asked to shatter this illusion and crack the mirror, breaking the perceived image of who you should be so a new image can be created. In creating this new image of you, you will be creating new experiences and a new way of living. So yeah, I'm not going to read the rest. There's more obviously that she has to say, but just that little message there I think is so potent. The idea of cracking the mirror, breaking the illusion, and really confronting that truth. We confront the truth, we become the best version of ourselves. And yeah, it's tough. It's not fun, but oh my gosh, is it truly something that is worth it in the end. So I do hope you've enjoyed this short exploration of the story of Elaine of Astolat, the Lady of Shalott, and her very tragic maiden energy. And please let me know your relationship to the story and your relationship to the maiden and her varied aspects within that archetype in the comments below. And I will see you in a couple weeks for the next video.